All right, welcome back. Welcome to part two of mixing bluegrass from start to finish. Now, a lot of times in a mix, we'll wait till the very end of a mix to volume automate, but I have found that in bluegrass, it's better to do it earlier on. And even if you just get the basics down, you might tweak it as you go. That's partly because we're trying to keep the mix as dynamic as possible without using too much compression, but still get things compressed enough where they have their dynamic homes. So I just found that doing volume automation earlier on was really, really advantageous. So what we're going to do today is we're going to volume automate and pan automate this mix. And then we're going to finish off compression in EQ, and the mix will be really, really close to done. Then at that point, we'll just be needing to add effects. And in case you missed the first video, I'll link to it underneath this one if you want to go back and watch it first. And the links to this band, Hancock and Shouse, that Jeff and I recorded at Tower Station. All those links are going to be below this video, including links to how you can find their music streaming online and links to the full studio tour that I did with Jeff at Tower Station. And this project was recorded by me and Jeff, tracked at Tower Station, and then mixed and mastered by me and Jeff. So this was a really, really fun project. And this song is called Lexington, which is available right now for streaming. So, all right, without further ado, let's dive back into the mix. Now, before we start volume automating, we're also at the point in this mix where I do want to turn on a little bit of two bus compression. Now, we haven't had anything on the master bus this far, so now we're going to add some two bus compression, then do our volume and panning automation, and then we'll see how much more we actually need on each track and subgroup. So let's take a listen here and let's turn on the Fairchild on the two bus.
Told me that you love me.
So I'm not going to get a lot of gain reduction out of the Fairchild. What I'm mainly doing is using the tubes and the circuitry to color it and saturate it, which will compress it a little bit. But we are going to get some gain reduction. It's just going to be really modest. So take a listen to the Fairchild when I turn it on compared to when it's off, just having the mix run through the circuitry.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you could go anywhere. Oh, take me home.
And you can hear the difference. Even with no gain reduction happening, the thresholds are not engaged. The Fairchild just has such a great quality. So we are going to tickle the signal here on the stereo bus a little bit. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually turn down the headroom a little bit. Our gain staging is great on the two bus, but I do want to give myself a little more room because before I even engage the threshold, I want to get the most I can out of these tubes. And I'm going to turn the balance up here a little bit. The balance more or less controls how the tubes affect transients. So that's going to give us more of the color that we want. And the time constants here, we're going to leave right there for now. I'm probably going to adjust the side image when we switch to mid-side. But I'm not going to fully explain the Fairchild today because it's kind of unique. But I will walk you through what I'm doing here. There's other great videos online that explain how to use the Fairchild 670 here. So the first thing that we're going to do is, now that we have the headroom turned down, is just turn up these gains, and that's just going to drive more saturation and harmonics out of the tubes into the signal, and then we'll level match with the output.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you could go anywhere. Oh, take me home.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. That's hitting a lot of circuitry there in the tubes, and that's just got a really awesome sound. Now, what I'm going to do is switch it over to mid-side, which on the Fairchild is lat vert. And we're going to turn the side chain up. This is probably somewhere around 200, a little higher. So we're going to get it well up over that upright bass so it's not over responding to it. Then I'm going to unlink the controls here now that we are in mid-side mode. All right, and we're gonna stick with the fifth selection up here for the time constant. This is now the mid channel, and that's going to give us a really fast attack still because all of these settings are super fast on the Fairchild. It's a very fast compressor, but this is a program dependent release now. And I'm probably going to change that on the side image. But let's go ahead and engage the threshold now on the mid image and get a little bit of gain reduction and start to glue the mid signal together.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you could go anywhere. Whoa,
That's about all I want right now. I do have the meter set to gain reduction. These meters are not the most accurate things, but we're going by ear here. I can hear gain reduction in the mid channel. Now I want to compress the sides a little harder, and I am going to try this faster attack, slower release setting that's not program dependent. And now let's engage the sides here with the threshold and start gluing the sides together.
well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you could go anywhere. Whoa, take me home. Lexington, take me home. Lexington, take me home.
Now we're compressing the sides a little harder than the mids. And on the Fairchild, the gain and the threshold kind of work hand in hand. So depending on the kind of character and how much you squash your signal. So I'm going to adjust these relative to each other here for a second.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you could go anywhere. Whoa, take me home. Lexington, take me home. Lexington, take me home.
And bypass.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you could go anywhere. Whoa, take me home.
Yeah, and I am going to stay with this time constant 4 here, which has the slower attack. I'm trying to leave all the transients, especially on the banjo and the mandolin. I'm not trying to affect those transients. I want to do that on the tracks. I don't want to do that on the 2-bus. But that right there is a great subtle bus compression out of the Fairchild here. Again, bypassed and back on.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you could go anywhere.
Yeah, that's nice. And now with the mid compression, we are tucking the vocal back into the mix a little bit more. And with the side compression, we are bringing up the panned instruments like the banjo and the fiddle. Their presence is coming up a little bit more. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this kind of 2-bus processing before I start the volume automation, because this is going to change everything. But I'm happy with this. We could leave this sitting right here. And if we needed to add another style of 2-bus compression later down the road, we could, but I'm also going to use the maximizer on the 2-bus. And if not during the mix, but definitely during mastering. So we're going to leave that right there for now. So there's a little bit of 2-bus compression. And now what I'm going to do is volume automate the mix. So when there is a little bit of a lead or a solo, like a fiddle line or a banjo fill, that those come forward and then tuck back in their spot. And also when they come forward, I'm going to pan automate, which is really common in bluegrass. So it sounds like that band member took more of a center stage for their little fill or solo, and then step back more towards their place, because that's how bluegrass mix themselves live. So I'm going to do all of that automation right now, and I'll save you the trouble of watching it, and then we'll come back. So I'm going to go ahead and play you the same part of the mix there with some volume and panning automation. So let's hop back in here.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you could go anywhere. Oh, take me home, Lexington, take me home.
All right, so you can probably see the VCAs moving over here. I did most of the volume automation with the VCAs, which I do highly recommend. And I'm going to show you what I did. So the blue line here on the acoustic, I did very little volume automation on the acoustic guitar. There's a few little spots where I wanted to give it some accents.
Lexington, take me home.
And that little spot, if you take a listen, just accenting that little walk, things like that. So very minimal on the acoustic. And I might go back and change all of these as we get closer to the end. But that was done directly on the acoustic track, not on a VCA. The VCAs, like here is the banjos. Let's take a look. So you could see that I'm accenting the fills here for the banjo.
A place, but with that.
Yeah, so the banjo comes forward for that little bit of fill, just like they would if they were doing it live. And I do have spots where I duck the banjo out of the way a little bit too. So it's pretty dynamic. Now, this little dip here, I do want to talk about. So one of the reasons I did not want to overly compress the banjo, and I may still apply a little bit of a clipper to it, we'll see. If you take a listen to this banjo again here in solo for this fill, and listen to the volume increase as it approaches the fill. Now, those little fills, I did not pan the banjo center. I only did panning right now for solo parts, not just a little bit of fills, because it's not very realistic for them to step too much center for a fill that's only a few seconds long. But what I wanted to point out is this little dip here, which is where the banjo has one high spiky transient note in volume that jumps out too far. Now, if I remove this node, take a listen. So that one note just jumps out a little too far. Now, I didn't do it all with volume automation. I also did it with clip gain. One of the microphones was a little more transient than the other microphones. So what I did was clip gain that banjo note down. And this happened about maybe 5 or 6 times throughout the song, where that one fill has the one note that jumps out too far. So to avoid over compression, I clip gained a little bit and also volumated a little bit just to keep it sounding really natural. I didn't do it all one method or the other, clip gain or volume automation. I blended it to try to keep it sounding really natural, and I think it does sound pretty natural. So listen to this other fill. Yeah, so that's nice. And I only clip gained to the one microphone. The other one was a little more steady. And when you hear a fill like that in the mix, and without that note, without that node there on the volume automation, without that little dip, it sounds like this. Yeah, it just jumps out too far. Yeah, that's nice, and it sounds pretty natural. So I did the solo for the banjo gets pretty loud. I want it to be nice and forward. Yeah, and then same thing with the fiddle. The intro of the song with the fiddle and then the fiddle solo are the loudest parts, but these are good bluegrass players. They also control their dynamics quite a bit. So, she's naturally playing louder for the solo and for the intro. But here's the intro. And this is the fiddle of volume automation right here on this track. And then it fades out when the vocals comes in. And there's parts where I dip the fiddle way to the background where it's not really necessary. So there's a lot of fiddle dynamics. This part I completely muted out because the fiddle part doesn't play much there, and there's a little bit of crossbleed coming in. So just as easy as doing a noise gate. I didn't want to noise gate any of this if I didn't have to. So I just take the time on a really natural sounding mix like this to do a lot of automation. But you can see there's the fiddle automation, and here's like an example of one of the fills.
Oh, take me home.
So that is just barely bringing the fiddle up. This is a really subtle one, and that leads into the mando solo, but without it, it's just too far background and there's less excitement in the mix. So a lot of this is not, a lot of this automation is just adjusting the faders so there's more going on and it's more interesting the way the players would naturally live in front of the audience.
Take me home.
And that one's a more noticeable fill. So yeah, just stuff like that.
Oh, take me home.
Yeah, so volume automation there, pretty good. And the panning, when the panning comes more to the center for the solos, the instruments are hitting our two-bus compressor differently because the Fairchild has a different ratio of mid and side going on too. So that is all part of the dynamic process there. It's working out really good, and I might, like I said, I might have to adjust some of this later. Now the mandolins are faded out for the mando solo, so they kind of blend together because the solo was overdubbed and the mando kept playing on the original recording. So here is the mandolins and then they volume automate out to blend for the mandolin solo. Here's what that sounds like now with the automation in. And up to this point, I've had the mandolin solos muted. They still have zero processing on the solos because they're on their own tracks and we're doing it separate, but this is how it sounds at this point.
Oh, take me home.
And then as the mando solo comes to an end, you'll hear the mandolins come back up. And that blends in the intro of the solo like this. Yeah, so pretty seamless. And the mandolins sound kind of different right now. The mandolin solo needs to be processed similarly to the mandos. Scratch that. And we still need to process the mando solos so they sound a little more similar to the original mandolin. So we're going to get to that a little later. But that's the volume automation, and then the panning automation. So here's the, right here, this track, this green line is the panning automation for the banjos, so you can hear how that sounds. You'll hear it come more to the center for its solo. Yeah, and I keep it gradual. So the way the banjo player would walk more towards the center of the stage and then walk back. And same thing for the fiddle. So there's our automation. And now the mix is a little different than it was before because we're hitting the two-bus compressor a little different. So that's why I did it in this order. Because at this point, I don't want to have to go back and change anything that I did. So I stopped the original balancing part pretty early on, went ahead and did the automation and the two-bus compression, and now we can move forward with the mix. And the next thing I want to do is go straight into the vocal and try to hone in our vocal tone before we complete the rest of the tonality around the instruments surrounding the vocals. So let's go ahead and get into Chris's voice here. Now, if you remember the vocal, this is Chris Shouse singing, the mandolin player, and we recorded him with a Neumann U87 in this Telefunken frame. It's an old vintage microphone, and it has this super full sound on the vocal, and it's so nice. It was just a great microphone.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you would go anywhere. Oh, take me home.
Yeah, really nice. So we have that super full recording. The sibilance is really under control naturally. There's no de-esser on here or anything. And there's, it's a little bass heavy, and we need to get rid of some low mids to be expected. But if you remember, we've taken out a little low mids in the first video. We've compressed the low end a little bit, and we took out a little at 760 and a little more at about 8K. So there's a little sibilance control there. But like I said, no de-esser.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared.
Yeah, very nice. But now we need to go ahead and dial in the vocal tone a little better. So I'm actually going to go ahead and increase the low mid dip here. And let's pop him back in the mix and take a listen and get a little more clarity and a little less boxiness.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you would go anywhere. Oh, take me home. Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you would go anywhere. Oh, take me home.
So I increased the compression on the low end, and I took even more out. We're almost down to 12 dB taken out at 234, but we are using the upwards expansion in the low mid, so it's not just hollowed out. We keep it dynamic.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you...
Yeah, carving out the low mids is great, and it's tempting to do it a lot because that's the masking frequency, usually around 250. But keeping it dynamic and using the upwards expansion there, I love that trick. That's a really, really useful processing trick on a lead vocal.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told...
Now, if I disable this node, take a listen.
Well, you told me that you loved me.
Back on.
Well, you told me that you loved me.
Yeah, I might actually decrease the expansion.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and...
That's a little thin.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told...
All right, before we do any boosting to the 2.5K range, which we're going to need to do, we are actually going to add a little parallel compression to this vocal and start bringing in some saturation. Now, because this is bluegrass and we're keeping it really traditional, we're not going to use all of the modern pop tricks that you use with parallel processing, a heavy saturation and heavy parallel compression. We're going to do tiny hints of stuff like that, but not a lot. But before we do any boosting, I am going to get a little bit of color out of this with the 1176 and add the LA2A. That's our classic vocal compression. And I have an entire video on this vocal compression setup. But we are going to go ahead and do that. And we'll see how it sounds here.
Well, you told me that
I'm going to increase the high pass filter and get it out of the bass range. We're going to take it all the way up to about 300. Now, I'm going to go for a pretty fast attack here, but, this FET compressor is super fast as it is, and a pretty fast release. I'm just catching a few peaks here. I'm going to leave the ratio at 4 for now, and let's engage and see how we're doing.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you would go anywhere. Oh, take me home.
Let's find a little bit more of a dynamic place here in the vocal.
As living in a fool, as living in a fool.
Great, we're not distorting, we're not causing any aliasing there. This free 1176 is really nice, but the purple will cause less aliasing, so that would be a better option here. But if we are only doing a little bit of tickle and getting some color and leveling out of it, then it's usually not an issue.
As living in a full house.
Okay. And let's increase our output to level match a little bit. Okay, bypass.
As living.
Back on.
As living in,
Bit much.
as living in a full house.
Bypass.
As living in a full,
Back on.
as living in a full house without all the blame.
Actually want to catch a little more peaks and see how it sounds.
As living in a full house without all the blame.
Yeah, I'm still going to leave the ratio at 4. That's nice. I'm not going to do heavy and parallel yet. I'm just catching a little bit of peaks. And now let's hit it with the opto.
As living,
And same thing, take that high pass filter up. It's about 300.
as living in a full house. As living in a full house without all the blame. As living in a full house without all the blame.
Bypass.
As living in a full house without all the blame.
All right, let's listen to this line here with both of these off, and then we'll turn them both on.
We laid down our heads. We said with a smile, I'll see you in the morning, if only for a while.
All right, both on.
We laid down our heads. We said with a smile, I'll see you in the morning, if only for a while.
Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice, steady, easy compression there that's bringing the vocal forward and keeping it more in its place. Now, on this line, I do hear a little bit of sibilance that I want to address. I think this is the worst line in the song in terms of sibilance.
We laid down our heads. We said with,
Yeah.
we laid down our heads.
Now, instead of hitting it with the de-esser, I'm actually just going to do it with clip gain. It takes longer, but it really does pay off sometimes, especially if you only have a few hot spots. Now, if you are new to doing your de-essing with clip gain, you could look for the dense parts of the waveform. So you see how these are more spiky, and then in here it's really dense. You can easily spot the S's with your eyes by looking for these really dense spots. And it's really easy to clip gain out your sibilance here in a really natural way. And then you don't have the de-esser taking away, little bits of your high mids.
Heads.
See, check that out.
Heads.
Yeah, that's nice. If I delete that,
Heads.
yeah.
Heads. We said with a smile.
And said with a smile, I need to catch both of those so you can see the sibilance right there. And let's take that out.
We said with.
A little more.
We said with a smile.
And I just want to catch a little bit of this guy.
We laid down our heads. We said with a smile, I'll see you in the morning.
Yeah, very nice. So if I have more of those that I need to do, I'll just do it this way instead of it with the de-esser. That's just going to preserve the vocal a lot better. Even if you have a really good de-esser, that's always a better way to do it.
As living in a full house.
House isn't that bad, the S on the end of house, but I can grab a little bit of it.
House without all the blame.
So as we move on, I'll do more of those if need be. But there's some vocal compression there.
House without all the blame.
And one thing I do like to do is a little bit of upwards compression on a vocal, especially since we have a nice, clean, isolated vocal. There's no background noise coming through from the rest of the session that we recorded. So I'm going to use a really slow attack. I'm going to leave it at 250 so it leaves the transients alone. I'm going to set the release to auto to see how that goes. This defaults with a little pumping. I'm turning that off. And let's take the range down. I'm going to just start with a ratio of 2. Set the range down here for now. And let's dial in a little bit of upwards compression on the vocal.
As living in a full house without all the blame.
Bypass.
As living in a full house without all the blame.
Do that in solo.
as living in a full house without all the blame.
And check out this line here.
A hat on my head, I played for lovers, I played for the dead.
Bypass?
A hat on my head,
Yeah, so that is a really nice, transparent way of managing the dynamics there. Now we're pushing from the floor up a little bit.
a hat on my head, a hat on my head,
Bypass?
a hat on my head,
Yeah, so the word on,
a hat on my head,
and turn the compressor on.
a hat on my head,
Yeah, so the quieter stuff is louder.
with the guitar in my hand,
Bypass?
with the guitar in my hand,
Back on.
with the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head, I played for.
Yeah, that's really nice. And we're not pushing the noise floor up in an area that we're going to have a problem.
With the guitar.
Yeah, there's a little bit pushing up, bypass the upwards. Yeah, it does push the noise floor up a touch more than I would like, but this is the point where we could add a downward expander after that upwards compression to manage that in between the vocal lines, or we could do it with clip gain.
With the guitar in my hands.
But it's so minor, I don't know if it'll be an issue, but I can dial that in later if I want.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head, I played for lovers, I played for the dead.
So there's 3 compressors all doing very, very little in serial compression. There's the 1176, which is catching the high peak dynamic spots. There's the opto, which is just smoothing it out with a few dB of gain reduction, riding steady, because the optos have those gentle nonlinear releases that are great for vocals, and then a little bit of upwards compression to finish it off. So let me listen to that line again with all 3 of these compressors turned off, and then we'll turn them on.
With the guitar in my hand, a hat on my head, I played for lovers, I played for the dead.
And all 3 on.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head, I played for lovers, I played for the dead.
Right, I like it. It's almost there. It's still a little more dynamic than I want, but we have to keep it sounding super natural. Now, at this point, we will do some heavy parallel compression, and I'm putting this after the opto and before the upwards. So we're going to dial in some heavy parallel compression here and get a few more dB of gain reduction out of it, but this time we will blend it. So let's take a listen.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head, I played for lovers, I played for the dead. Whoa.
So that's 4 dB of gain reduction there with the threshold engaged that far at a ratio of 6. I'm going to speed the attack up and then crush it a little bit on the transient side, and then we'll blend it.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head.
Yeah, that's way too aggressive. And let's do some makeup gain there. And then we're going to take a listen to this delta.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head.
Yeah, we're catching almost the entire signal there. The threshold's engaged quite a ways. So this is really aggressive compression. And then we're going to blend it. We do not need all that. So let's start at around 50% and take a listen.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on.
Bypass.
With the guitar in my hand.
Back on.
With the guitar in my hand.
In the mix.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head.
Bypass.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head. With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head, I played for.
Yeah, and that's still a little heavy. We're going to actually go about 2/3. So only about 1/3 of the compressor is coming through now. The rest is dry. So just.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head.
Bypass.
With the guitar in my hands.
Back on.
With the guitar in my hands, a hat on my head. I played for lovers.
All right, all 4 compressors off.
With a guitar in my hands, a hat on my head, I played for lovers, I played for the dead.
All four compressors on.
With a guitar in my hands, a hat on my head, I played for lovers, I played for the dead.
Right, we've really pushed him forward. The quiet stuff is louder, the louder stuff is quieter. We've added some color and character to it with the FET compressor and the Molotok, the La circuitry as well. So let's take a listen in solo.
With a guitar in my hands.
Yeah, and so now we would need way less boost at 2.5K because we've added high-mid color from the compression. The compression has tone-shaped it.
With a guitar in my hands, a hat on my head, I play.
Yeah, I'm actually going to remove a little bit more.
With a guitar in my hands, a hat on my head,
Actually, right around here now, this is a bit harsh. So I'm going to do a little bit of dynamics here at 4K.
With a guitar in my hand.
A little more.
With a guitar in my hands, a hat on my head,
All right, let me bypass that note I just added.
With a guitar in my hand.
Back on.
With a guitar in my hands, a hat on my head, I played for.
Yeah, that's nice. So we had added a little bit of harshness there, and I don't even know if we're going to need to boost him at 2.5 or 2K. Now I'm going to add a little bit of a transformer saturator here.
With a guitar in my hands.
And this has an air function too, which is nice. So let's just add a little bit of harmonics to the low end.
With a guitar in my hands.
To fatten it out, and a touch of air on the top.
With a guitar in my hands.
And bypass.
With a guitar in my hands.
Back on.
With a guitar in my hands. A hat on my head, I played for lovers, I played for the dead.
Yeah, and now our tone is kind of where we want it. So I don't even know if I'm going to have to EQ any more high-mid into that vocal. We'll just see as we go forward here. I'm going to move on to something else and catch fresh ears before I come back to the vocal here. So we added 4 instances of different compression in serial and then a saturator. Let's find a different vocal line here and listen to it without everything we just did.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you would go anywhere.
And back on.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you would go anywhere.
Yeah, I like it. We're going to move on and leave that there. But now the vocal is standing out in front of the mix, and it's got a nice home there. It's got a nice hole. That's really good. And we'll hit the backup vocal probably. It'll be one of the last things we do. And then I want to go back to the bass real quick since we have more of the mix coming together. So we're going to lower the range on this higher band here of the bass, and we're going to increase the ratio and go with a harder knee and add some look ahead. Now, in FabFilter's Pro MB, this look ahead is going to cause latency, so we have to listen to see if we're creating a distance between the higher high mid transient and the low thud of the bass. But I think we're going to be okay. I'm going to turn the oversampling on 2%. But we are in FabFilter's dynamic phase here, so let's take a listen. Yeah, I think we're fine. That helps a little bit. Let me harden this knee even more. And harden the ratio even more. Now we're basically limiting this high band. So we've helped the high mid transient area of the upright bass, and we've also increased the low end a little bit. I don't want to go crazy on that before we get towards the end of the mix, but I did want a little more bass out of this, and now that it's coming together, I can hear that it's time. So We've done those little adjustments there.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you would go any.
Yeah, still sounding natural. Still really digging that. I think I am to the point where I do want to turn the bass up in the mix a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and do that here on the output. Give it another dB.
Well, you told me that you loved me. You told me that you cared, and you told me that you would go anywhere. Oh, take me home, Lexington, take me home.
All right. Well, it's really starting to come together. And that was a pretty good session right there. So we've come a long ways in this video compared to where we left off. So everything's getting its little bit of hole. It's got its little living space, and we have the panning and the volume automation down. So I say we're more than halfway there. The mix is really starting to come together. And when we add some really subtle reverbs and maybe a little subtle hint of delay that's hardly noticeable on the vocals, and we do some additive EQ and start finishing off everything's little tonal balance place, then we can work more on the two-bus. So, but that's pretty good for today. We'll go ahead and leave it there. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. Let me know in the comments if this is helpful to you guys. Again, big shout out to Hancock and Shouse. Check them out. Check out the links in the description down there below. And I hope to see you on the next one, where we'll hopefully finish off this mix in the next video. So, all right, y'all, take care. Happy mixing.
It's been a while since I felt the same as living in a full house without all the blame. We laid down our heads, we said with a smile, I'll see you in the morning, if only for a while. Oh, take me home, Lexington, take me home. Lexington, take me home. I've got a twin bed, I got a one easy chair, I got a blue coffee cup that says Kentucky State Fair. Oh, take me home. I said, Lexington, take me home.